And one thing I like about mindset is that it's in our control. So we have a lot of things that we cannot affect, we cannot control, but the mindset, that is something that we can construct. One principle that I've applied is that if others can do it, then why can't I do it? It's not about copying what other people are doing. It's more so about looking at, for example, the habits or the components, etc., etc. In today's video, I want to talk about the core foundation that has helped me to get to 7 figures with self-publishing. And I want to talk about mindset. So I believe that the power of mindset can't be understated, because the decisions that we make, it usually comes from our way of thinking. So I think that by watching this video, you will get to see how I think, and by applying how I think, these principles that have worked for me, I believe that if you stack enough great decisions after each other, eventually that will show in the result. So that's why I think sticking to this video will be very powerful and beneficial to you. And one thing I like about mindset is that it's in our control. So we have a lot of things that we cannot affect, we cannot control. So for example, we can't control a lot of things such as where we were born, etc. But the mindset, that is something that we can construct. And I have definitely constructed my mindset. It is not something that was built by accident. I remember I was 16 years old when I first discovered the concept of having a mindset and how that could affect your life and your success, etc. And I remember how I was becoming aware of my thoughts through meditating. And I remember that I had a lot of negative thoughts. I mean, sit down here, and I remember that it was a struggle for me to overcome these negative thoughts. Everyone was teaching that you need to have positive thoughts, etc. But I couldn't get rid of my negative thoughts. It was very negative self-talk. It was more or less that I'm not good enough. In other words, that was what I was telling myself. So I found, for example, one idea that worked for me was that whenever this thought would arise, I would always apply a funny voice to it. And I would imagine that was a funny character that was saying these things to me, and they were blowing up like a balloon, and they were disappearing in the corner of my view. So I had different techniques like that that helped me. Another thing that helped me was that I started taking action in alignment with who I wanted to be and the people that I looked up to, for example. So I imagine that if I do these things, if I take these actions, then my self-talk, the dialogue that I'm having, eventually it won't mean anything. Even if I'm saying I'm the worst person in the world, if I'm giving to charity, for example, or I'm doing something good for someone else, then I can always point to that and say that, hey, that's not true. Look at this. So I believe that sometimes it's very powerful to get outside of yourself and to see that when you're providing value to someone else, your self-talk, if it's negative, it doesn't hold much power. So the first key mindset strategy that I want to talk about is to understand why mindset matters. So I believe that the mindset, it shapes everything that we do. If we believe in success, then we will move towards success. But if we believe in failure, then that's not good. So the science behind this, there's something called the reticular activating system. So it filters information based on your beliefs. So for example, if you, or what you focus on, or if some event has recently happened, let's say you bought a new car, then all of a sudden you will start to see that car everywhere. It's not that that car didn't exist before, it's just that now you're aware of it and you're focusing on it. One thing that I did earlier this year, which has been very helpful for my publishing business, is that I turned a question, which was, why haven't I seen any book take off in a while? And I turned that question into a focus. And it took me several months of having this question unanswered until I finally pieced together enough information from different sources and from analyzing my own books, the results, etc., to really understand, okay, this is the reason why. And I don't think I would have been able to do that if I simply continued like before and I didn't put this question in mind. So I believe that the mindset, that is just one example of what you focus on is what you will attract or what you will find answers to. That is just one reason why the mindset matters so much. And it is the foundation. It is the decisions that you will make will be based on the mindset that you have. So another strategy is to adopt key mindset principles. So for example, one principle that I've applied is that if others can do it, then why can't I do it? So this is about modeling success. Instead of reinventing the wheel, why not look at what's already working? It's not about copying what other people are doing. It's more so about looking at, for example, the habits or the components, etc., etc. Another principle is self-discipline over motivation. So I believe that motivation, it comes and goes, but discipline, that is something that remains. So I believe that self-discipline, it's like a muscle, and that is something that I've really experienced now. For example, I'm getting up at 4 a.m. The first thing I'm doing is taking an ice bath. I'm documenting it on Instagram story currently. I won't do it forever, probably, but I will do it until I finish this big project. And by putting myself a little bit out there, I'm able to have other people keep me accountable, which is one strategy in and of itself that can be very powerful. But I've noticed that when I'm taking these ice baths in the morning, it was always harder in the first week. And the reason it hasn't gotten easier in terms of how it feels, how the cold water feels, but it has gotten easier in terms of the self-talk that I have before. So there's no discussion about whether or not to do this or not. Now, principle number 3 that I would like to discuss is systems over willpower. So one example of setting up a system that does not rely on willpower is by planning tomorrow today, so that you know exactly what you will do. For example, when I'm taking the ice bath in the morning, I always lay out so I have the clothes after and I have the shoes ready. I can start walking on the walking pad. I can get to the office immediately, and I can have my bottle of water ready, etc. And I know exactly what it is I'm supposed to do. I don't have to think. In the morning, I just go. And that is one example of relying on systems rather than willpower. And another principle that I think is very powerful is the compounding. And thinking about that, not just in terms of money, but in regards to everything that you do. So the habits that you do, those will compound. The relationships that you build, they will compound. The skills, your own skills, but also the skills of other people that you're working with. If you're able to work with them consistently, then they are developing their skills. If you're giving feedback or you have some sort of feedback system in place, etc. So I believe that compounding, that is one thing that I would really tell myself to focus on early on in life if I were to go back. And earlier on in my publishing business as well, I would tell myself to look for opportunities for compounding, because that is very powerful. Now, the third strategy I want to talk about in regards to mindset is guarding the influences in your life. And that could mean people, but it also means information. So for example, negative information, that's news. It might be certain videos. So that means being very deliberate about the content that you consume. So making sure that it's in alignment with your goals and dreams, and protecting yourself from anything that might not be in alignment with your goals and dreams. So I recommend that you spend around 30 minutes per day. At least that's what I aim to do every day, listening to something inspirational or something motivational, maybe a mindset video like this, to really make sure that you're on track in terms of your beliefs. And when you listen to this kind of information, it will slowly start to almost in a way brainwash you, where of course success is possible. Of course it is, because I'm seeing it everywhere. And like we discussed earlier, that's the power of the reticular activating system, where once you focus on something, you will start to see it everywhere. You will start to pick up certain habits that successful people do, and there will be certain techniques, strategies, everything will just fall into place. Let's move on. So the fourth mindset strategy is focusing on the long term. I remember Brian Tracy said that 5 years will pass anyways. The only difference is where will you be after those 5 years have passed. And I think it's important to see the correlation between what we're doing today and the results that we will get in a year from now, 3 years from now, and 5 years from now, because there will be a correlation between the actions that we take today to the results that we're getting in 5 years. And usually, I think in publishing, it's around 1 year. So when I've implemented a strategy or something, I really start to see the results of that strategy after about 6 months, a year. And I think that thinking long term in that regard, it is something that is very powerful, because then you're able to make decisions which will have the most amount of benefits to you in the long run. So one example for me is, instead of making $10,000 a month and making 7,000 of that in profit and then just staying at that level, I was thinking, okay, but what if I can get this to $50,000 a month and I can make $25,000 in profit? Then that is a lot more than $7,000 in profit. That is an example that if you're able to delay gratification a little bit, then that will usually be in your favor. And one thing I might not have mentioned, the phone, the storage got full, so it cut off. But I want to discuss the concept of making your environment, optimizing your environment so that you want to work. So for example, making this video, I didn't want to make a video today, but then I talked to someone and I got the advice to go somewhere nice. And here you can see it's a waterfall behind me. It's nice. I'm taking a bike ride. This is not hard for me to do once I'm here. And for example, if you look at my office, I have a painting. If you look at the PowerPoint videos, I have a painting of a ski slope and snow and the blue sky, and that is making me more happy to be in that environment. So for example, an example of not being in an optimized environment would be working in a room where there's no windows, for example, or it's you don't want to be there. So think if there's ways that you can make your working environment more inspiring. So for example, at one point I was working in a cafe. That was helpful for me. And also you can reward yourself with certain things. So maybe let's say you're eating something that you like. You're connecting, okay, when I start working, I get to eat this thing that tastes good. And sometimes you might need to do stuff like that, because the most important thing is to get going. Once you get going, it's usually very easy to continue, especially as you get involved into the work. And that is, of course, then you want to make sure that you don't have any distractions. So optimizing your environment may also mean that you make sure that you have your charger in the same room. So all of a sudden you don't need to be interrupted and go and pick it up in another room. So you want to think about all these small details when optimizing your environment as well. Now, this video wasn't at all a complete guide to having a perfect mindset, but hopefully it provided some great insights that you can apply to your own way of making decisions, and some small habits that you can implement. For example, listening to inspirational or motivational content for about 30 minutes per day and picking up the habits of success, etc. And as you're focusing on success more and more, then you will start to see success more and more as well. You will start to see successful books, and you will start to pick up certain things that they do to become successful, etc. It's an upward spiral, and that is what I really appreciate with this. And it, as with anything, it compounds. So the more knowledge, the more positive habits you build, the more likely you are to build another positive habit, etc. So that's all I have. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, hit the like button. And if there was any concept or idea that resonated with you, drop a comment down below. And thanks for watching. See you in the next video.